Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Sustainable Sustainability Podcast, where we speak with steward leaders who choose to do well by doing good, both in business and in life. Rather than being intimidated by the existential challenges that we are all facing today, like climate change, inequality, etc., these leaders take these challenges head on and convert them into an opportunity, into win-win-win opportunities. So today, I have with me, as usual, my co-host, Taimur Nabili, and together we welcome our guest, Brianne West. Brianne is the former CEO and founder of Ethique, a regenerative beauty brand, and is currently CEO of Incredibles. She also runs a digital education platform called businessbutbetter.com. Brianne, welcome to the show.
Kia ora, thank you for having me.
To begin with, tell us a little bit about Ethique. What was it all about? Why you started it? And then what are you now doing with Incredibles?
That is a gigantic question. So Ethique was this idea that I wanted to rid the world of plastic bottles, which sounds a little bit naive at the start. I was a university student. I wanted to create a business that operated as ethically as possible, but not only that, but the product itself displaced something wasteful. Because people aren't going to stop buying things, but we can help them buy better. So I started Ethique in my kitchen. I had no idea what I was doing. I had started and sold to very, very small businesses that were more, I guess, typical businesses, but I'd got very bored. So I came up with this idea of starting a company that instead of producing liquid shampoo, which is, 95% water, packaged in plastic bottles, then shipped around the world to be then used in a room where water is literally on tap, why not concentrate all the stuff that makes it a shampoo into a bar and put that in compostable packaging? So that's what Ethique was waste-free beauty bars, everything from shampoo and conditioner to face moisturizers, lipsticks, and everything in between, everything in home compostable plastic-free packaging. It grew really well. It did really well. So started it in 2012. I sold a majority stake to a private equity firm in 2020. And along the way, we picked up 22 countries, 8,000 retailers, an endorsement from the likes of Britney Spears, which was totally unpaid for, as if we could afford her. And it was a wild ride, shall we say?
But it'd be interesting that your starting point was doing good. It wasn't doing well.
No, absolutely. And that's what I put success down to, because beauty is a massively, massively saturated market, right? And the whole reason Ethique stuck out and did well was because from day one, we were about protecting people and planet. And you could still have good hair. And it wouldn't cost you millions of dollars for a bar either. It was a combination of those. So it was built in from the very foundation. That's why it was authentic. And so we sold it to a private equity firm. I stepped down as CEO last year, and now I am doing the same thing in a slightly different industry. So getting rid of plastic bottles in the drinks industry with Incredibles, so imagine instead of buying a can of Coke, you have your glass of water at home, you pour some Incredibles, that's what they're called, into a glass of water. It transforms your drink into the tastiest, waste-free drink you can imagine.
Fantastic. So look, the interesting model here is that you started off from the perspective of I want to make a difference. I want to do something good. I want to do something ethically and environmentally friendly. But obviously, all your other business activities and your better business model you've got online demonstrate that you also have a strong sense that a business needs to be profitable. A business needs to make sense as a commercial entity. So tell me about how you marry those two things up. And I guess there are two aspects to this. You could either run an ethical business, which seems to be what your model with Ethique was, but then you turn that around also. So instead of just running an ethical business, you use that business to be ethical by giving away some of your profits to ethical other businesses. So that's kind of an interesting combination of practices. And I just wondered how you arrived at that decision.
Probably in a circular manner in some respects, I suppose. Ethique was started with a charitable program from day one. So it was always that we were going to give away 20% of profit or 2% of sales, whichever was greater every year. And that was from day one. And everybody said that's a stupid idea because startups by their nature don't have a lot of cash. Right?
Yeah, how did your investors respond to the idea that you were going to give away your profits?
My there was lots of questions and there was lots of reassuring. At the end of the day, the vast majority of them, because we did equity crowdfunding, so we had 352 shareholders, they were totally on board. When it came to the private equity firm, they tightened things up a little bit, but they were fine with that commitment. At the end of the day, again, it's the foundational cornerstone of Etik's brand. And if you took that away, you'd be losing so much of the brand. And that's a really important part about not compromising on your values and your ethics, is making it part of the brand. So therefore, it's incredibly valuable. It's what people are buying. So it was all these ethical decisions, if you like, they were never. There's a few examples where it would have been easier to give up on some of those values in order to grow, if you like. So one of my favorite examples is we were given an opportunity with a retailer in the USA back in 2017. So we were still a relatively small company. We only just started our US expansion, and a retailer came to us and said, we'll give you, I think it was 1,500 stores, multi-million-dollar deal. And this wasn't unusual. A lot of retailers came to us because of our ethics and our values and our brand story, we were getting a lot of press. And it was still very exciting. We went through the whole process. We went through the contract, and one of the clauses was all products must be wrapped in a poly bag to prevent leakage. And I said, cool, no worries. We don't have to do that because bars don't leak. Problem solved. And the account manager said, no, sorry, it's actually just a policy. And I said, well, poly bag is plastic, so we won't be doing that. I'm sure you understand that that's just not our values. And they said, oh, don't worry, because we take it off before it hits shelves so consumers will never know. That wasn't why we didn't want to do it, right? But that is unfortunately some of the mentality. And this is where this idea that you have to compromise your ethics to be profitable, I think it comes in, because people don't think it's real. But if it's authentic to your brand and you make it fit from a commercial standpoint, this is a big part of why these brands are successful. And if you are inauthentic about it and you don't stick to them, you will just shoot yourself in the foot. We said no, and we picked up a larger retailer, I think a couple of weeks later. So it did the brand no harm, which of course was an element of luck, but also an element of that brand and storytelling. And I use that as an example a lot. Because yes, sometimes you do have to make those hard decisions to keep in line with your values. But if you have built a strong business, it shouldn't cause you harm. However, you do have to bear in mind, as you've pointed out, that sometimes ethical businesses stray a little bit too far into the charitable non-profit territory to the point where they're not commercially viable. And I understand why they do this, because I am idealistic myself, but you have to have a business that is financially sustainable or you're going to create no impact at all. That doesn't mean you have to compromise on your values, but it means you just have to be smarter about what it is that you do.
Let's go back to Incredibles for a minute. Tell us once again, what exactly are you trying to do?
Save the world from plastic bottles. The drinks industry is one of the world's greatest plastic polluters, which I don't really think is a surprise to most people. But I think 45% of litter on your average city streets is single-use drinks containers, and that's totally unnecessary. On average as well, your average person has 7 reusable bottles in the USA. 7, which
so what are these
defeats the purpose. They're literally drink concentrates.
Okay.
So a lot of people sort of grasp the concept a little bit easier if think of like a soluble aspirin. But it doesn't taste like aspirin. It tastes like a cola or a blackcurrant, right? They taste great, but it just dissolves in water and flavors your drink.
Gotcha. So now I'm interested. Most people think of environmental sustainability as a cost problem, as a compliance headache, or at worst, a risk. You're looking at it and you've turned it into an opportunity. What do you say to the skeptics who say, no, there's no opportunity in sustainability and it's only about cost and headache and compliance? What do you have to say to those guys?
If I was feeling kind, and so today I will be kind, I just think they're not reading the room. It's a totally outdated attitude. It's very common that sustainability is nothing but a cost. But putting aside the fact that if we don't have a planet to live on, that's kind of a problem in itself, right? And we are heading in the direction of a planet that is going to become unlivable within a few decades in certain areas. And, as time goes on, it's going to get a lot worse. So that's comment number one, right? If you look at it as just a cost, then you're totally ignoring all the opportunity. And from a product perspective, there's lots of businesses, I think, that have gone about this the wrong way. The reusable bottles is a good example. Now they've become a fashion accessory, and instead of something that prevents single-use bottles from being used, suddenly you have to have 7 or 8 in different colours and glittery and sparkly, and I think we've really missed the point there. But there's a lot of opportunity. I mean, renewable energy couldn't be a bigger opportunity, really, could it, for the environmental movement? There's an awful lot of money to be made, if that's how you want to look at it, from seizing the moment. And I guess I don't care if you do it because you genuinely believe in the environmental movement, which is a bizarre term, or if you do it because you want to make money. I think that idea that you have to sacrifice the planet for financial stability is wrong. The caveat being, of course, the idea that continual growth at all costs, is an impossibility on a finite planet. So there definitely has to be some consideration to that, and I don't know the answer to that. I'm not an economist, but they are certainly not mutually exclusive.
I mean, to follow up on Rajiv's question, though, how much do you think the business world is taking that message on board? I mean, you started a number of other online ventures trying to coach other enterprises and entrepreneurs into this way of thinking. Are you getting any traction there? Do you have hope that that this is going to become the norm?
It depends on the day, without question. But obviously, I operate in a certain circle. And the entrepreneurs that come to me for mentoring, and there's lots of them, and I turn the vast majority away simply from a time consideration, they are all impact entrepreneurs. But I am operating in a certain sphere of people. It is not the norm to think about entrepreneurship as an impact endeavor first and foremost. It is absolutely not the norm. I don't know if it ever will be. I'd like to hope it will, but if I'm being practical, I don't think it will be, because what I think will happen is that businesses will start to consider impact simply as a requirement for them to attract consumers, because consumers are becoming more and more driven to find brands that actually care. And everybody talks about this statistic, right? 86% of people will buy a product if it has a social or environmental if it solves a social or environmental problem, which is great, but that's just what people say they do. What they will do is actually very different. But there has been behavior studies that shows that people do purchase and are more likely to defend and are more brand loyal and are more likely to refer their friends and family to businesses that have this solid purpose at their core. And once brands and businesses begin to understand that and understand their consumer a little bit more deeply, they will realize that really is the only way to move forward and to grow, because brand loyalty is an all-time low. We don't have the same, or we don't develop the same loyalty to brands that our parents and our grandparents did. We for some reason, I guess because we're bombarded with messages from brands all the time in a way that never used to happen, right, on social media and in general, we don't have that loyalty. Brands that lead with purpose do. So that is a massive boon to the brand. So businesses are definitely moving in this direction. Some of them it's a little bit inauthentic and shallow. Whether that matters, it depends on whether they're greenwashing or not. But you are definitely hearing more and more execs of bigger companies who are beginning to talk about that this is an important thing they need to take advantage of in their messaging.
So, you make it sound like it's so easy. It's the obvious thing to do, doing well by doing good. And why wouldn't anybody think like that? Because otherwise there'll be no planet here, etc. To you, this comes up. So I want to dig deeper a little bit. We all want to make money. We all want to be successful. So some people are coming at this idea from a strategy perspective. Hey, the world is changing, and if I want to be profitable for a long time, I better do the right thing by people and planet. Some people come at it with a predisposed notion that I want to do good, and I'll figure out how to be successful by doing that. What was your primary motivation, the strategy angle or the innate desire to do good first?
Definitely the idealistic aspect, and that's not ideal, because the only reason Atik was successful is because I was surrounded by pragmatic colleagues. So I was very lucky. I brought on he became my COO in 2016, who's now my business partner through all our ventures, and he is the pragmatic half. So he approaches it from, he wants to be successful and do good, whereas I'm more the opposite. And I do find with entrepreneurs who do approach it from the I'm going to do good at all costs, they can be less commercially aware. And that is actually more difficult, I think, to fix, because not fix, but to temper. I think idealistic people like me, we can be a little bit black and white at times. And, this isn't a good thing to do, so therefore I'm not going to do it. And I'll use another example here. It took me a long time to come to the agreement that we would sell on Amazon. Amazon is not a company that you associate with ethical anything, really.
Or one that would listen to the vendors who use it.
Not at all. So we partnered with the largest reseller to Amazon in the USA. And it took me a long time to make that decision, but the theory behind it was you're going to do more good by offering people something they're already going to buy. And if you are not on the place they shop, you may as well not exist. So the impact you want to create simply will not be there, because you need to be bigger to create that impact. So when we launched on Amazon, we did very well, very quickly, in part due to that partnership. And they changed. They were the largest reseller, hundreds of thousands of orders a day. They actually changed their warehouse to be a waste-free. So they were the largest retailer to Amazon, and hundreds of thousands of parcels. Like, it was a massive operation, and they changed their warehouse to be a plastic-free one through working with us. So I'm a believer in that you can change the system if you work within the system to a degree.
Wow, so you managed to get Amazon to change some of their activities. That's kudos to you.
A reseller to Amazon, not Amazon itself. We never worked directly with Amazon. That would be a different kettle. But I give Amazon a little bit of credit. At times they are trying to change some things in some respects.
Timur, listening to her, it sounds to me that it is possible to be ambitious for your own personal commercial success and do good at the same time. It sounds like you don't have to compromise your own personal ambition for wealth or anything while doing all of this.
I mean, it's a surprise to me that this is even a contentious issue.
Yeah.
I mean, I think there are so many people out there that are doing what Brianne is doing to a certain extent, perhaps not without the same success or the same profile, but what is weighing on them is the normal business practice attitudes that they face, perhaps that's kind of stifling that side of their thinking on these things.
Exactly. I mean, I wonder why more people are not seeing this. That actually, if you don't want it to be, there is no conflict.
I got so much flack starting out, right? And I was a young entrepreneur, and I was particularly insecure. I did not feel like I really belonged in most business environments. I felt silly in boardrooms. And I was constantly told, you cannot run a business like this. You cannot make these decisions. You cannot do this. The benefit I had, and I think this is one of the reasons that Atik did well in those earlier years, was I'm really unreasonable. And when I truly believe something to be the right call from a values standpoint, then I don't back down on it, unless shown that actually it's the wrong decision with evidence, right? And I think that's the key. I'm really bullish about things that matter. I'm not necessarily as bullish about the way we go out and do it, because I could well be wrong, because again, I'm nowhere near as experienced as so many other business people. And sometimes it's so hard when you are values driven, you are someone who wants to change the world, and you are surrounded by people who still believe in the more typical way of doing business, right? And that erodes your confidence. And I absolutely understand why people think it's not possible, I'm going to give up. I do understand that.
That attitude there sounds to me very much like your whole steward leadership conception, doesn't it?
Exactly. And I was just curious, did you have to be autocratic about those values and that purpose in times like that?
Only on rare occasions. I built a team around me who were as on board. We hired for attitude and belief systems more than anything else. We didn't have to believe in every value. We had a lot, we wanted to change a lot of things, but you certainly had to get the understanding that business should be fair and it shouldn't be exploitative. That's a fundamental belief system. And I mean, I don't know many people who think that business should be exploitative, but it's the understanding that so many practices are. I mean, I find it really interesting how many ethical businesses they call themselves ethical, I know. And then I'll ask them a question about how the people who make their products are paid, like how much are they paid a living wage? And they'll be like, oh, I don't know. How is it you're ethical if you've never even thought about that? I'm not saying businesses need to be perfect. I'm saying it's a journey, and you ask questions and you improve on things every single time you saw something. You improve on things every single year. But if you've never even thought about it, that's a bit odd, personally.
Absolutely. I mean, you have to be deliberate about it. The issue that we're dealing with in the tech industry and many other industries right now is this idea of integrity. Just because something is not illegal doesn't make it right. Just because you're not doing something wrong doesn't make it right. You have to be deliberate about it and think about, it may not be illegal, it may not be wrong as per society's understanding today, but what pans out if I do this? What will happen and what is likely to happen? Those are things you have to think about deliberately, isn't it? Yeah, so totally agree with you on that.
People aren't great at long-term thinking.
No.
And that comes along a lot.
Which is exactly what you were referring to earlier, that, it's about that interdependence, the idea that the more I give, the more I succeed. It's about long-term thinking. It's about taking ownership to do business this way and never stopping to innovate, which is kind of what steward leadership is all about. And we're hearing it in different words.
Well, we're recording this conversation barely 48 hours after Donald Trump has been re-elected. And along with that has come a lot of conversation about what is the US's commitment to sustainability and environmental issues and causes like that. So I just wanted to ask you, Brianne, where you are in New Zealand has a reputation for being perhaps a little bit more environmentally conscious. But tell me, how you think government activity perhaps influences these ideas and these philosophies that we're discussing.
I think if you are waiting for government to do enough, then you'll be waiting forever. I think governments have proven through their inaction that they are not to be relied on. And I'm not trying to slag off politicians. There are bad politicians, but there are also good politicians who are trying to do the right thing in a system that's not built necessarily to do the right thing, right? There's lobbyists and complications and I don't know, international diplomatic things we can't even possibly consider. So the people who are in those positions trying to do the right thing possibly can't. So I gave up on the idea of government doing the right thing a long time ago. And I think businesses need to. You then ask the question, of course, but businesses aren't going to if they don't have to. And that's where consumers come in. Consumers have all of the power because they are the ones who make companies successful. Unfortunately, we forget that. We forget that ultimately consumer dollars are what keeps businesses in business. And this is a lot idealistic, right? And there are things you do have to buy simply to exist, right? You not every dollar you spend can be a vote for a better world, but some of them can. And the more we empower consumers to know more, the more we can change business. And those businesses do impact on government. And eventually government will catch up because you see after, massive climate events, you see rumblings of civil unrest, and you're going to see more and more of that. And eventually and unfairly, you're going to get, why didn't you do anything sooner? And it's not necessarily unfair, but it also sort of is because to move the needle truly on climate change, governments need to make big decisions, and a lot of consumers really don't want them to. Or not consumers, but people, like some of those decisions were going to be a big change, and I don't think people are necessarily ready for that. It's not to say to live in keeping with 2 degrees, because 1.5 is gone. It's not to say that we have to give everything up, obviously, but those decisions for some people would be uncomfortable in many respects. So the answer to your question is, if you're going to rely on governments, we need it because we need legislation and regulation for those businesses that aren't going to make changes. I just don't think it's coming along fast enough anytime soon. So businesses need to man up and do it. And if they're not going to, consumers need to make them.
So let's talk a little bit more about how you get your mentees and your class participants to do this. What is your blueprint for entrepreneurs when they're balancing all these considerations, and how do you advise them? Give us a brief framework of the course.
You're talking about business but better now.
The business but better approach that you do.
It's basically just a free resource system for people to go and build a business while they're trying to create impact. And to be perfectly honest, there's not a lot of difference between that and like a typical, MBA for to just as a point, it is for early stage businesses because it is easier to build these brands with these values in earlier. So we do target those early stage businesses, but it's simply a matter of everything from your business structure to things like how you will pay and reward your employees to basic stuff like how you're going to source your products and ensure that the people making them, again, are paid fairly. Or if that isn't a possibility, and often in some instances it's not, how are you going to work towards that they are? How are you going to ensure that they have fair working conditions? It's just, it's so hard to say, and I appreciate you said earlier that I make this sound simple. I appreciate it's not. I cannot overstate how hard building a teak was. It was also incredibly rewarding. We saved 35 million plastic bottles while I was CEO. We donated 2 million. There was lots and lots of good things. And really, that's only a small business on the world stage. But these decisions weren't the difficult part. It was difficult because growing a business is difficult. All of these decisions simply made, because we communicated about them, they made the brand stand out that little bit more. In a world where everyone does them, of course, that will no longer be a benefit and you'll have to find an extra commercial benefit. But all we take Business with Better People through is your usual business building moments. We group mentoring, you talk about all the things that you'd usually come across, but we just come at it with a slightly more specific lens. So if someone is looking at how they're going to package a product, what is the best packaging option? And it's not necessarily something that's compostable, because single-use plastic, for example, is better than single-use glass, which is something I get so much hate for, but is a scientifically proven fact. If you wanted to use Coke again as an example, you're actually better off buying a plastic bottle than a glass one for the planet. So we try and instill the idea of really looking deeply into sourcing, again, understanding how you will work with your team, what is best for them, what you will pay them, so on and so forth. And the rest of it's just running a business, because being a sustainable business just isn't that different. It's just running a business that doesn't exploit people. And I know that does feel really different to a lot of people, but it's just a couple of different decisions based on, and plus all your usual business stuff.
It's a choice, isn't it, in the end of the day?
It is. It's a choice. If you want to do good things, then you need to make those decisions. But again, I do like to reiterate this point. You cannot be perfect. Etique was in no way perfect. We tried to do as many things as possible, and we added more things in as we could. But at no point will we a perfect business, because every decision you make has impact. And I think sometimes when we talk about this, we do overwhelm entrepreneurs and business founders and CEOs because they think they have to be perfect. And that's the other thing, right? Now we have another ridiculous term, green hushing. We have to have a term for everything, right? Where businesses are too scared to talk about some of the good things they're doing because they're not perfect, and they know that people in comments on social media, for example, will say,
they open up too much on it, yeah.
Yes. But that's a shame, because these businesses aren't coming out and saying, oh, we're perfect, we're doing this. They're coming out and saying, hey, we've tackled this bit and now we're going to do this bit. Obviously, greenwashing is a massive problem.
We see a lot of that. Now,
Yeah.
you've been also, besides being a successful entrepreneur and in the business of doing well by doing good, you've also been a darling of all these award-giving entities. You were named Top 100 Global Thinker by Foreign Policy Magazine, Young Entrepreneur of the Year, and One Young World's Entrepreneur of the Year 2020. You've received many other awards, including induction in the Women Entrepreneurs Hall of Fame. So, in sort of a short sentence, what would be the core of secret of your success?
That adherence to values, because I started this, 12 years ago, when it was still relatively unknown, and I was loud about it. I talk about it on social media. I talk about it in the press. I'm not, as a business person, you are often told not to have strong opinions. You're told, you need to fit in with existing structures to ensure that you are successful, but I never did. I stuck to these values. I stuck to this plan, and that is what gained us press, and that is what gained awards. Awards are lovely, right? I think award shows are stressful and unpleasant, but awards are a lovely reflection of the team and the work done, and it's very kind, but they are not necessarily reflective of anything really. I mean, a lot of people work a lot harder than I do. I've been incredibly lucky and great timing and a great team.
Very good, very good. So there you have it, friends. It is possible to do well by doing good. The first step is to choose to do well by doing good. And then, as you just heard, adhering to those values, even in difficult times. No need to be perfect, but adhering to those values and pursuing relentlessly the purpose of doing well by doing good. And it definitely is possible. Is there a guarantee for success? There's no guarantees in life at all. But if you don't give up, the only way you can fail is if you give up. So that's pretty much what I'm getting out of it. Brianne, it's been a real pleasure talking to you. Thank you very much for sharing your thoughts with us today. And
Thanks, Brianne.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.